All right, here we are behind the table, joined not only by our own Sunny Hostin, but by Senator Cory Booker. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for this very enviable seat between the two of you.
Honored to have you on the show today, and this was something that came together late last week, and we're so happy you were able to make time for us on this busy schedule of yours.
I'm grateful to be here. It's really, as we were talking before you started the podcast, you've created something really special and a sense of community at a time that we need more connection. And frankly, the conversations that you all have are not easy conversations often, but they're important conversations.
No, and I think what makes the View special is they reflect the conversations that people are having on the street every day right now with their friends and family.
Yes.
And we're so honored to have you here for this. If we can go back to your 25-hour speech on the Senate floor, we've been talking about it since the election. What does resistance look like right now? And what are people hoping for? What are people looking for? And I think immediately after the election, everyone felt kind of nomadic in how they were dealing with it, that there wasn't some galvanizing moment. And I think you provided that last week for many people. More than anything else has. Is this what resistance should look like if you're looking for resistance?
Well, first of all, I think that we were all taught that if you do the things you always do, you're going to get the results you always get. And so if these are unusual times, we have to be willing to take on unusual actions ourselves. So I think that goes for everybody. The second thing I want to say is I resist the label of resistance a little bit.
Okay.
And this is what I mean by that. Could you call civil rights activists who got on freedom rides and did marches as resistors, or were they actually standing up for our shared values? In many ways, I think that what Donald Trump is doing with a lot of his actions around taking away health care or shaking Social Security or assaulting and laying off tens of thousands of veterans, I think what he is doing is an assault, and that we don't need to resist it. We need to stand up against it. We need to stand up for our common values and our common ideals. And so the more people that stand up for compassion and empathy and love, the more people that stand up for health care and retirement security and our veterans, that's really what I want to do. He is the one that in many ways is the assaulter. We are the ones that are standing strong for our values.
I completely agree with you, because I've said that on the show from day one. It's not, resistance to me feels also like a passive action,
yes,
where opposition feels active.
Yes.
And so I think I agree with Brian. I think you provided what opposition to an assault looks like, as opposed to being passive about it. You were active, and I was just so proud, because I've known you for a long time.
Very long time.
But in terms of people opposing these actions and standing up for these actions, we saw that, I think, all over, not only this country, but all over the world. We're talking about tens of thousands of people not resisting, but opposing these actions in the streets. What do you think about that? Does that give you some sort of hope that what you started is really galvanizing the country?
Again, I don't think I started anything. I think there were noble voices, millions of them already speaking out. I'm a bit of a social media follower, and I've seen these creative young people, esteemed elders really speaking up. But I did notice, which shocked my staff, was that the American ideal is hope for the world.
Yes.
And when my staff told me that 350 million people on TikTok liked it,
yes,
actively pressed a heart, that showed me that it wasn't just Americans, but yet the world who is yearning for America to be America. And so that's what's exciting me right now, is that there is a movement of people who have been trying to break through for a long time, that they're now finally seeing more people join them. I have to say, and I confessed this during my speech, that my constituents have been demanding, saying I'm not doing enough, and I own that. That I am, in many ways, by stepping out and doing things differently, I'm joining those who are already doing it. This is how movements start. The civil rights movement didn't start in the 60s.
Right.
It started decades earlier, of people doing things. Often they would end up in jails or lynched. But now we're seeing this movement really start to take off, as we saw this past weekend, with millions of people coming out. But we cannot stop until the threat is gone.
I'm so curious because you just mentioned that you follow social media pretty closely. I do too, but we have that conversation here a lot about whether it matters, whether it's just noise. I'm curious what you pay attention to, what social media you look at.
So I try to be out there a lot. I try to, the algorithms worry me because I know they're serving up often what confirms. So I'll actively search for people that are a little bit out of
You'll try to get out of the algorithm.
Out of the algorithm, or rely on a lot of friends to push me things. So I invite some of my closest friends who I know are in the different verticals than I am to push me things. And again, what I'm seeing right now, even in the conservative world, is conservative voices starting to say no, from Bill Ackman.
I saw that this morning.
For a long time, saying, come on, this is wrong. To the American Enterprise Institute, which is a right-leaning think tank, calling out today saying, look, we looked at the math that you used to come up with this, and it's nonsensical. There's no strategy here. There may be noble ideals that America continues to be the economic powerhouse of the planet, but what you're doing is actually jeopardizing that. And that's why it's very important for me to, whenever possible, to get us out of our partisan grooves and lanes.
Right.
We have to call our country to start being for something greater than the lines that divide us, and affirm that we have ties that bind. And the story I often tell, because I travel around, and you and I were just talking about that. When you go out in public, there's people will yell what they want to yell at you. I often feel like next month is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you.
You may consider sending me a card because I often get yelled, "You mother." So I'm always, I always hold my breath, when I get on the plane or train, especially. And so this day I get on the plane and people are being nice to me and putting up and I sit down next to a woman to a mother-daughter, 80 and 60.
Wow.
And they look at me and their Southern accent and they say, from where my family's originally from, and they say, "Who are you? Why are people paying attention to you? Are you a professional athlete?" And so a big black guy, that's often an assumption. There may be a part of me that wants to get insulted, but my ego's like, well, I could be.
Well, you were at Stanford.
But I say, no, ma'am, I'm not. And they go, well, who are you? And I go, I'm a United States Senator. And immediately, most Americans want to know when they meet a congressperson out in the wild, are you with them or are you with us? What tribe are you in? And she goes, are you a Democrat or Republican? And I go, ma'am, I take a deep breath and I go, ma'am, I'm a Democrat. And then she looks angry and sour, crosses her arms, and she goes, I should have brought my Trump hat. And she swivels away, facing her daughter in the window. And I'm like, I know this song.
Yeah.
It is a horrible song. It's played not just in the public, it's played at our workplaces, it's played at our Thanksgiving tables. Yeah. And I'm not dancing to this tune. And I go to her, ma'am, Donald Trump, he signed two of the biggest bills I've ever written in Congress into law. One that liberated thousands of people from unjust incarceration, a bill called the First Step Act, and another one I wrote with Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, that got billions of dollars invested in the lowest income rural and urban areas called Opportunity Zones. And she was sort of shocked that I was sort of praising the president. Yeah. And so she swivels back towards me. By the end of the flight, we were laughing, talking, sharing stories, and affirming the truth that we had so much in common.
More like than
so
not.
If we start cutting each other off just because how we vote and not realize that we have so much common cause, then we're going to fail to create ground that we can build on. Right. And so that's what this moment calls for. If people who paint broad brushes and say the Republicans or the Democrats are missing that a lot of people vote for who they sincerely believe is going to help them.
Yeah.
And if you close the door and condemn them just because of who they voted for, or because how they identify politically, then you are hurting America.
You're hurting yourself. I was speaking to my mom, who's one of these people that is firmly in the never Trump.
Yes,
he's screwing up our country. I don't want to speak to. I have family members that are Republican. I'm not speaking to that person. And I tried to explain to her that it's wrong at this point to say you were wrong. I feel more comfortable with you were misled. You were lied to.
Yes.
You didn't understand what happened. And so that's the approach I think that makes more sense. But I want to follow up on a question that I asked you that you didn't really answer today.
Okay, go ahead.
I asked you about leadership in the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And I know that you are part of leadership in the Democratic Party. But I wonder, because people needed the fight that they saw in you for 25 plus hours, do you think that you should be the new minority leader?
No, definitely not.
Really?
I don't want that job.
Why?
Look,
Because you brought so many people together.
I appreciate it. And Chuck has been doing in the last election, remember, we won Senate races.
Yes.
Something that often is not done. In fact, the only time I can think of it is Susan Collins years ago won in her state when Obama won her state. But rarely do you see that where people split tickets in a state. And we did that with Tammy Baldwin. We did it with Ruben Gallego. We did it in Michigan with Senator Slotkin. And, so again, I look at Chuck as somebody who has a record of success and he has the caucus support. There's just no way. He has a firm hold on the 47 of us. But that doesn't take away from my role to be a leader in the Senate, but more importantly, is to try to offer leadership in our country, in our community. And I'm going to tell you this right now. There is a new era coming.
Okay.
And I mean this sincerely. The baby boomers, which I look at as a civil rights legislation through my lens, civil rights generation.
Yes.
They are being called home. Many of them are leaving their positions. Many of them are leaving us, like John Lewis. No matter what, you can't stop generational change in this country.
Right.
X-Gens, millennials, and Zs. It's our day is dawning. And so you're going to see Nancy Pelosi step aside, Hakeem Jeffries take that spot, first X-Gen leader there. You're now going to see Chuck Schumer. No matter what you say, he's not going to be there.
Yeah.
He's got, in terms of his leadership, I know he's going to live to his hundreds, but in his leadership, there are more yesterdays than tomorrow. That change is coming. This is definitively the last baby boomer president, and we've had a lot of baby boomer presidents.
We've had a lot of them.
This is the last baby boomer president. And so it's now time for a new generation of leaders to start to emerge. And leadership is not a title or a position. It is a demonstration. It is a way of going. And what I want to see from this next generation, and we've got an incredible rising talent in America, is I want them to start showing their leaders before they're given a leadership title.
Okay.
And right now, this is a test. Who is going to step in this time and step up and lead?
Well, the rule book's been thrown out, and the Democratic Party seems to me is still playing by the same rules.
And that's where we agree. That's where we agree.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, and I mentioned a lot of them during my 25-hour speech, there are people in my caucus that I am in awe of. When Tammy Duckworth, who sacrificed literally her legs, almost died serving for us. And when she comes, she and I work on IVF, and the threats that that Republican president and others have done in giving people access to reproductive freedoms. When she stands up metaphorically, she speaks with a moral force.
She sure does.
Mark Kelly is a Jersey boy. I tease him all the time. He's in the New Jersey Hall of Fame, even though he's Arizona's senator. When he stands up, this guy is a fighter pilot. He is a whiz engineering. When he stands up, he speaks with moral authority. There are so many people in my caucus. Lisa Blunt Rochester, one of our newest members. She has changed the Senate along with Angela Alsobrooks, not just in breaking the glass ceiling, doubling the number of black women we've had as senators, but when they stand up and talk about maternal mortality, when they stand up and talk about veteran jobs, they speak with authority. So just the change I'm seeing in the Senate. When I came there, I was the only African-American in the caucus. It was the least diverse place I'd ever worked in terms of American voices coming in. And we asked Chuck Schumer to make a change. One of the this is a podcast conversation, not something for a quick TV bite, but we said to Chuck Schumer, all this talk about DEI. I said, Chuck, this is the least diverse place I've ever seen. And what I want you simply to do is make every Democratic senator just post the diversity statistics of their staff. Don't force them or whatever. Just create transparency. And he told me he got pushback from Democratic senators because it was embarrassing, the lack of gender diversity they had, religious diversity. Every year that we've done that, the number of people in the room where it happens, because the truth about Congress is staffers write legislation. Staffers decide which policy emphasis. And the amount of diversity, and what I'm hearing back in this 10 years that I've been there with this incredible change, where you're seeing more women in positions of authority in the Senate, chiefs of staff, legislative directors, more minorities in positions of authority. What I'm hearing now from senators themselves is I was tackling an issue, And I never thought of this perspective.
Yes.
And when my staffer told me the real,
Yeah.
I shifted my position on
I
this.
said that about Harry Reid recently.
Yes.
He knew how to be a minority leader, but his chief of staff was a black woman.
Yes. Yes. And that's what makes
When
Amer-
all else fails,
and-
just
and this is why,
look to a
again, an
black
affront
woman.
to what Donald Trump is doing. Harvard Business School, consulting McKinsey and Company, they all say that in business, diverse teams are more successful teams.
Yeah.
Period. And that's one of the things that America has is we are the most multicultural democracy
Absolutely.
on the planet Earth, and we are better because of that.
It's a strength,
Yes.
not a
Look,
weakness.
my dad, born poor in the South, and if he was here, he would say, "How dare you say on that podcast that I was poor? Tell him the truth. I was just P.O. I couldn't afford the other two letters." We trace his history back to slavery, single mother poverty. And then my dad broke out of that trap for a couple of reasons. One, because of a conspiracy of love in that town that would not let him fail. They pushed him to college, even though he never thought of it as something option. Church collection got him to college, to an HBCU.
Yeah.
That said, we are going to be established as an institution to start dealing with the pipeline problems we have in America. Now, HBCUs still today are responsible for the most black teachers, black generals, black doctors.
Absolutely.
Comes to Washington, D.C. at a time that blacks aren't being hired by major corporations. And because, again, diverse coalition in D.C., blacks and whites, putting pressure on corporations, he became IBM's first black salesman in the D.C., Virginia, Maryland era. Diversity program, but guess what? He became instantly
qualified.
Not just qualified, he was qualified. It's IBM's benefit to create a
Yes.
more diverse applicant pool.
Yeah.
Still hire the best of the best, but diversify your pool.
Yeah.
Do a little harder. Go to HBCUs and recruit. It's a little harder. Look for people to apply for the position. Once he got the shot, hungry kid from the South, he became one of IBM's top 5% of their global salesmen, got a promotion up to Manhattan, and that's why my family moved to New Jersey.
Wow.
And so that's what diversity and inclusion is all about. It's not about hiring people that are not qualified. If you want to talk about somebody hiring people not qualified, look at Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, he's hiring people for major legal positions that never tried a case. He's hiring people to lead our military that even our military generals are coming out and saying this person's not qualified for the
Well, I
job.
want to ask you about that because we're 2 weeks out since this whole Signal Gate,
Yes.
right? Group chat
Yes.
broke out, and the White House said, case closed, we're not investigating it, it's over. Now, you're on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Will there be some accountability there? Because, I mean, that was just one of, it seems to me.
Feels like a year ago now, with
It's-
everything
it-
else
Yeah.
happening.
It was just
It's-
2 weeks ago.
yeah,
I mean,
I
I
know.
worked for the federal government.
but
I was
that-
a federal prosecutor.
Yes.
That's baseline. You cannot use a Signal group chat for government business.
But that is their intention. They want to, as they say, flood the zone so you forget about the horrors of last week. But this goes to the very security of our country.
Yes.
And there are obvious questions which have not been answered. Like, is this the typical pattern in practice for our intelligence people? If there was one signal chain,
How many others
how
are there?
many others are there?
Yes.
There needs to be an investigation, and this is what I mean about eroding the Constitution of the United States. And you know this as a lawyer, the Federalist Papers, the debates around, they said we need a system of checks
Absolutely.
and balances. Congress was established with one of their roles is to provide oversight of the executive.
Yeah.
And we have not had one hearing to ask the questions that are vital to our national security.
Will we be able to have them?
Again, we're in the minority.
Yeah.
We've been pushing for this, challenging for this. I've had private conversations with Republican senators who are outraged by this. But the question is, will you do the right thing, or will you kowtow to Donald Trump, who doesn't want you to have hearings, doesn't want those questions asked in the open forum? This is about our national security. Will you put your patriotism over your party? Will you put your belief in and love of country and its security over your allegiance to Donald Trump and what he's doing in this case, which is wrong, wrong, wrong?
I have a question for you. Trump's HHS Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has a Make America Healthy Again slogan, agenda rather, that he's pushing. The idea is, let me make sure I get this right, they hope to end America's epidemic of chronic illness by focusing on safe, wholesome food, clean water, and the elimination of environmental toxins, which on paper sounds very good. You're a vegan yourself. What do you make of the goal, at least, I guess, if not the.
The goal is noble, and if you look at speeches that I've given in the last 10 years and Robert Kennedy, you see a big Venn diagram of overlapping areas. We have a food system that is savagely broken, and this might shock you. 93% of our ag subsidies subsidize the foods that our doctors tell us not to eat. Only 7% go to fruits and vegetables.
That is shocking.
So think about this. It's why my kids go into a corner grocery store and can find a Twinkie product, Twinkie-like product, much cheaper than an apple. That's because we subsidize everything in the Twinkie, everything in the Happy Meal, everything in the things our doctors tell us not to eat. But you go to try to get a salad, and it's a bucket of salad costs $15. Yes. And so we are literally funding a system that is making us sick, and then we have to pay for the healthcare costs. So if you look at America today, our grandparents didn't have these diabetes rates, didn't have these obesity rates, didn't have these chronic heart disease
I'm worried
problems.
about microplastics.
Yeah. So this is where we overlap. We have a big food oligarchy that is dominating food policy, and that has to stop. And I've been fighting against that. I'm happy to have an administration, because even the Biden administration, love them to death, didn't do enough in this space, and it is a crisis. And by the way, almost one out of our $3 in the government now is for healthcare, and mostly fueled by chronic diseases that are diet related. Now let's hear this is the hypocrisy, the utter hypocrisy of people who support Donald Trump because they're a part of the MAHA movement. It's because what has Donald Trump done in his first 80 days? He's cut food programs that give kids better access to healthy fruits and vegetables. They're savaging access issues, and you cannot win this fight. In fact, if you took Americans with chronic disease and gave them free access to food, there's a bipartisan caucus in the House called the Food is Medicine Caucus. We know that you would actually that program would pay for itself and return huge dividends, because people that have increased access to healthy, fresh foods, their chronic diseases and challenges go down. But here's also what they're doing. You mentioned quality of water.
Right.
They are savaging the kind of environmental protections that stop polluters from polluting. Our air is dirtier because of Donald Trump. More people will suffer who have emphysema or asthma. More people will die as a result of that. And that's not something I wish. That's what the doctors and the people that look at pollution released in our country. And the water systems are going to be more dirty. This is a president that says out of one side of his mouth, I want to make America healthy again, but then I'm going to let the polluters, the chemical companies, and others have more freedom to make our air and water dirty. So you cannot make America healthy again if you're not expanding access to healthy, fresh foods. You cannot make America healthy again if you're allowing polluters to pollute our water and our air more than's happening right now. So again, I love the ambition. I love the things that he's saying. And by the way, they're doing some things in changing dietary standards and the like. And I'm going to continue where I can find common ground with RFK. I'm going to do everything I can to support and to lead block and to join him in the things that are right. But far be it from me to sit quietly when you're hurting our children with your policies, hurting vulnerable health communities who have vulnerable health conditions as well.
All right. Well, listen, thank you for your time today. Before we go, I heard you had a run-in with Sunny's son, Gabe, that I wanted to ask you about. Tell me about this.
Listen, there is my favorite quote by James Baldwin, who says that children are never good at listening to their elders, but they never fail to imitate them. This woman has incredible children.
She does.
Because she is an incredible person, has modeled that behavior. I tell my mom all the time, Mom, the older I get, the more I realize I am so much like you, good and bad. But I am who I am because of the elders that I've had. And so I think that one of the most hardest, under-supported positions in America is being a mom.
Yeah.
And what we put stresses on. First of all, we have the highest maternal mortality rate. So just having a baby is more dangerous in our country, especially for women of color. Exactly. But then when you talk about how much time does a woman get when she has a baby and protections on her job.
I got almost no time when I worked for the federal government.
Right. We have laws that pale in comparison to our competitors who have shown that investments in paid family leave, investments in maternal leave, pay back huge dividends, not just for the mother, but also for the children. Healthcare, we're about to cut, Donald Trump is threatening to cut Medicaid. 40+% of our kids are being born on Medicaid. And so what I want us to be is it's one thing to talk about so-called family values, but our policies are a tax on families. Let me give you the last example of that, which is the child tax credit. This president right now is about to savagely cut Medicaid in order to give tax cuts to the wealthiest in America. And the top 30, 40% of our country is doing really well. But those people that are struggling, that you're cutting their health care, are doing really hard. How could you cut these programs just to give bigger tax cuts to the wealthy? Well, what we should be doing is giving tax cuts to families. The child tax credit, which me and Bennett and Brown, Senators Bennett and Brown, and it went to the Biden administration, asked them to include it in our agenda. We had 1 year of an expanded child tax credit, cut child poverty in half in our country, raising kids. And kids above the poverty line have so much more productivity. Every dollar you invest in getting a kid above the poverty line returns almost $7 back to our economy. But here's the thing. What it proved is that child poverty is not an inevitable condition. It is a policy choice. And so you would rather give carried interest to billionaires and millionaires than give expanded tax credits to families to take away the stress, the cortisol that's shooting in families' brains because they live in such stress because they can't afford the basic needs. We need to have a budget that reflects our priorities. And the number one priority of a great society should be the success of its children. And when you put stress on expectant mothers, when you put stress on new mothers, when you put a mother in the situation where they're having to choose between losing my paycheck or being there for my sick child, everyone loses when they have to make those kind of decisions. These are all policy choices. We need to have a more pro-family policy stance in our country, as opposed to ones that's making it harder and harder in America for mothers to succeed.
Well, I will thank you for treating my child so well, because he was working for Congressman Liu, working on actually clean water and conservationism and stuff like that.
Congressman Liu is an extraordinary leader.
Yeah, he was really great. And you saw my son's name tag with my last name, and when you called me, I was terrified. I didn't know what he was doing. I knew he was giving like tours on Capitol Hill, and he just gotten there, and he was using Professor Google as his guide. So I was like kind of concerned about him, but you were very kind to him. I appreciate that.
Listen, when you find out who somebody's mama is, and you know that mama, you gotta brag.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Senator. It's really an honor to have you. I think you broke the record here for the longest podcast meeting Anna Navarro. So there you go. Way to go.
I don't know if that's a compliment or means that I'm a little
it's a compliment. It's wonderful. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll be back tomorrow with Alyssa, and we'll see you then.